Charlie of the Rolling Stones died, and how does the Rolling Stones go on, and all that kind of stuff. But I thought, my Jesus, it's like you lost your buddy. Yeah, well, it's very difficult to lose friends, you know. As you get older, you lose a lot of friends. And not only friends. It was one of the most heartbreaking moments in rock history, and one of the most puzzling. When Charlie Watts, the heartbeat of the Rolling Stones, passed away in 2021, fans expected his bandmates to be front and center at his funeral. Instead, they were nowhere to be seen. No Mick Jagger, no Keith Richards, no Ronnie Wood. The truth behind their absence was far more complicated than anyone imagined. The story begins in the mid-1980s, when Charlie Watts faced a period of deep personal turbulence. For most of his career, Watts had been known as the quiet counterpoint to the band's wild excesses. While Mick Jagger and Keith Richards dominated headlines for their rock and roll lifestyles, Watts maintained a reputation for moderation. But around 1983, that image began to unravel. His previously moderate use of alcohol and drugs escalated into something far more destructive. Watts would later admit that his substance use was not about chasing a rock star high, but rather an unhealthy way of coping with mounting family issues. "They were my way of dealing with family problems," he reflected. "I think it was a midlife crisis. All I know is that I became totally another person around 1983 and came out of it about 1986. I nearly lost my wife and everything over my behavior. It was a startling confession from a man often described as the Stones' moral compass. His wife Shirley had stood by him since before the band's rise to fame, and Watts later acknowledged that her loyalty was tested to the limit during those chaotic years. Eventually, he recognized that if he didn't change course, he risked losing not just his marriage, but his sense of self. By the latter half of the decade, he had managed to regain control over his life. In the late 1980s, Watts made another major lifestyle decision. He quit smoking. For a man who'd spent decades performing under the relentless demands of touring and recording, it was a significant step toward better health. However, even this discipline couldn't shield him from future medical challenges. In June 2004, Watts was diagnosed with throat cancer. The news was a shock not only to fans, but also to the band. He underwent an intensive course of radiotherapy, enduring months of treatment before the cancer finally went into remission. Recalling that time, Watts said, "I went into hospital, and 8 months later Mick said, 'We're gonna do a record, but we'll only do it when you're ready.'" True to their word, the Stones waited. While Jagger, Richards, and Ronnie Wood kept themselves busy writing songs, they didn't push Watts to return until he felt strong enough. When he was ready, he joined them in the studio to work on what would become A Bigger Bang in 2005. Remarkably, just after his recovery, he embarked on a grueling 2-year world tour to promote the album. Reflecting on the experience, Watts joked, "It seems that whenever we stop, I get ill, so maybe I should carry on." For the next decade and a half, Watts continued to tour and record with the Stones, seemingly defying the toll that age and illness had taken. But by 2021, his health again became a matter of concern. On 5 August of that year, the band announced that Watts would sit out the resumption of their no-filter U.S. tour. He had recently undergone a medical procedure, widely reported as heart surgery, and in consultation with his doctors, decided that he needed time to recover fully before returning to the road. The decision marked a rare absence in Watts's nearly 6 decades with the Stones. To keep the tour going, the band called upon Steve Jordan, a longtime friend and collaborator, to temporarily take over drumming duties. Jordan had previously worked with Richards in the Expensive Winos and was considered one of the few drummers capable of filling Watts's shoes, even if only for a short time.
On 24 August 2021, Charlie Watts passed away at the Royal Brompton Hospital in Chelsea, London, at the age of 80. His death was the result of squamous cell carcinoma, a type of cancer. In keeping with the dignity and privacy that had defined his life, Watts spent his final hours surrounded by his family.
There were no public fanfares, just the quiet presence of loved ones, as the man who had been the Rolling Stones' heartbeat for nearly 6 decades slipped away. The news sent shockwaves through the music world. His surviving bandmates, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood, and even former bassist Bill Wyman, all paid heartfelt public tributes. Jagger shared a joyful image of Watts laughing. Richards posted a simple yet haunting photograph of a drum kit with a closed sign hanging from it. Wood spoke of their brotherhood, and Wyman, who had left the Stones decades earlier, remembered Watts simply as a beautiful man. Beyond the Stones, the outpouring was immense. Rock legends and musical peers expressed both grief and admiration. Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr of the Beatles, Elton John, Brian Wilson, Pete Townsend, Nick Mason, Roger Daltrey, members of U2, Bryan Adams, Liam Gallagher, Brian May, Roger Taylor, Kenny Jones, Chad Smith, Questlove, Peter Criss, and Max Weinberg all saluted Watts's artistry and character. To them, he wasn't just a drummer, he was a gentleman of rock.
The Rolling Stones' official website became a digital shrine. For 10 days, every page was replaced with a single black and white image of Watts. No words, no navigation, just his presence. A powerful, silent tribute. 2 days after his death, musicians Jason Isbell and Brittany Spencer dedicated a live cover of Gimme Shelter to Watts, a reminder of how far his influence reached, beyond the Stones' own catalog. Then, on 27 August, the band's social media released a moving video tribute, rare photographs and clips set to the Stones' 1974 track, If You Can't Rock Me. The choice was perfect. It captured both his quiet dynamism and the knowing humor behind his stage presence. Watts's funeral, however, was a small, private affair. He was laid to rest in Devon, far from the world's cameras, in keeping with his lifelong aversion to spectacle. Yet the celebrations of his life continued. In October 2022, an authorized biography of Watts was released, offering a deeper glimpse into the man behind the drums. On the first anniversary of his passing, Mick Jagger posted a moving tribute, pairing archival images of Watts with Jagger's voiceover set to the Stones song Till the Next Goodbye.
On 2 June 2023, which would have been Watts's 82nd birthday, his estate launched official Facebook and Instagram accounts. In a statement, the family explained, "Charlie was too modest to embrace social media in his lifetime, but we hope fans will use these platforms to celebrate his huge contribution to rock and roll, blues, and jazz, and the wonderful man known and loved by millions around the world." Even in death, Watts's legacy extended beyond music. In September 2023, it was announced that his private book collection would go to auction. Among the treasures was a signed first edition of The Great Gatsby, expected to fetch between $200,000 and $300,000, a testament to his refined personal tastes. Then in January 2024, another unique chapter unfolded. The Bayeux Museum in France revealed it had acquired a life-size replica of the Bayeux Tapestry from Watts's estate. Price tag? £16,000. A reminder that Watts, ever the quiet connoisseur, collected not only music, but also history and art.
And here comes the most anticipated part, the real reason why the Rolling Stones didn't attend Charlie Watts's funeral. At the time of his death, the band was already in Boston, fully immersed in rehearsals for their long-delayed, no-filter U.S. tour. This was not a casual run-through. It was a massive operation, with stage crews, lighting teams, sound engineers, every detail planned to the second. Canceling or even pausing would have created ripple effects of delays, losses, and jeopardized the livelihoods of hundreds who depended on the tour. The band also felt a deep responsibility to their fans. They knew that even in mourning, the show had to go on. And for Charlie Watts, the man who had always put duty above spectacle, perhaps that was the truest tribute of all.
The tour had already been postponed once due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Ticket holders had waited patiently for over a year. Another delay would have been a major blow, not only to the Stones' reputation, but also to the morale of their audience. Many had been holding on to their tickets since 2019. International travel restrictions in August 2021 only made it worse. Flights from the US to the UK came with strict quarantine rules. Anyone arriving in Britain faced isolation, and on returning to America, similar rules applied. For Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, or Ronnie Wood, time was simply something they didn't have.
The risk was real. The entire tour could have been canceled before it even began. Health and safety were also at the forefront of their decision. The Delta variant of COVID-19 was spreading rapidly. Any unnecessary exposure, airports, funerals, gatherings, could have sidelined key members of the band or crew. The Stones had worked diligently to protect their touring bubble. Breaking that bubble, even for something as important as Charlie's funeral, risked not only derailing the tour, but endangering everyone involved.
Beyond logistics, there was something deeper, something rooted in who Charlie Watts was. He always valued privacy and disliked unnecessary spectacle. His funeral in Devon reflected those values. Small, low-key, attended only by close family and a few trusted friends. Those who knew him best said it was exactly the farewell he would have wanted. Former tour manager Sam Cutler put it plainly. Charlie would have hated a fuss. The Stones respected that, knowing a high-profile funeral would have gone against his very nature. Still, the band found meaningful ways to honor him. Every night of the No Filter tour, they opened with a moving tribute video. Charlie behind his drum kit, the screen filled with archival footage of his elegance, his precision. They even altered their legendary tongue and lips logo to black and white, a subtle but powerful symbol of mourning. Performances across the tour were dedicated to his memory. Mick Jagger often stopped to speak about his friend. Keith Richards posted an image of Charlie's drum kit with a simple closed sign draped over it. A stark, wordless message that spoke volumes. Mick Jagger shared a photograph of Watts smiling warmly, a reminder of the quiet joy he brought to the band. These gestures weren't grand or theatrical. Instead, they were subtle, understated, just like Charlie. And that made the farewell resonate with millions of fans around the world. Now, let's step back in time. Mid-1962, a young Charlie Watts, already a respected drummer in the London jazz scene, crossed paths with a group of rhythm and blues hopefuls, a group that would soon change the course of rock history. At the time, Watts was a familiar figure on London club circuit, especially in venues that catered to the British fascination with American blues. It was here he first met Brian Jones, Ian S. Stewart, Mick Jagger, and Keith Richards.
Instant chemistry sparked, but Watts didn't join right away. In early 1960s London, he was already earning a steady wage from jazz gigs, a rare luxury for a working musician. The Stones, still unproven, often played for little or no pay. Convincing Watts to give up financial security for a struggling band was anything but easy.
It wasn't until January 1963 that Charlie Watts finally agreed to join as the Rolling Stones drummer. That decision marked a turning point, solidifying the lineup that would dominate the music world for decades. His first public performance as a permanent member came on 2 February 1963 at the Ealing Jazz Club, a hub of the British R&B movement. From that moment on, Watts's steady, unflashy drumming became the backbone of the Stones' sound. Mick Jagger would later introduce him affectionately on stage as the Wembley Whammer.
But Watts was far more than just the band's drummer. He was also a visual artist, lending his creative touch to the Stones' image and stagecraft. In the early days, he contributed graphic art and comic strips, even designing the sleeve for Between the Buttons. He masterminded one of the band's most memorable publicity stunts, the 1975 New York press conference. Instead of reporters in a stuffy hall, the Stones shocked the city by rolling down Fifth Avenue on a flatbed truck, blasting brown sugar in the middle of Manhattan traffic.
That spectacle was Watts's idea, inspired by the street performances of New Orleans jazz bands. His influence extended far beyond art, to the design of the Stones' massive touring stages. Working side by side with Jagger, Watts helped shape some of the most ambitious stage productions in rock history. From the lotus-shaped stage of the 1975 Tour of the Americas to the giant set pieces of Steel Wheels, Bridges to Babylon, Licks, and A Bigger Bang, each tour became a breathtaking blend of music and theater.
Watts' professional discipline was legendary. Across decades, he never missed a single concert, a record of loyalty that spoke louder than words. His final live performance with the Stones came on 30 August 2019 at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. It closed out the No Filter Tour just before COVID-19 brought live music to a halt. Alongside Jagger and Richards, he was one of only 3 members to appear on every Stones album, cementing himself as an irreplaceable part of the band's identity.
His drumming wasn't flashy, but precise, economical, always serving the song, never the ego. Many musicians claimed it was his touch, the secret behind the Stones' enduring groove. Even after his death in 2021, Charlie's presence lingered in their music. In October 2023, the band released Hackney Diamonds, their first studio album in 18 years. And on 2 tracks, Mess It Up and Live by the Sword, you can still hear him. Watts's timeless groove, recorded before his passing.
Those songs were a bittersweet reminder that even in death, Charlie Watts remained at the heart of the Stones. His unshakable rhythm shaped the sound of one of the greatest rock bands of all time. But behind the music, there was also a private man, loyal husband, quiet collector, reserved gentleman. Are you curious about Charlie Watts's personal life?
On 14th October 1964, Charlie Watts married Shirley Ann Shepherd, the woman who had captured his heart even before the Stones began their meteoric rise. Their courtship predated the band's fame, and Shirley would remain a steady presence through the whirlwind years of rock and roll. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Watts's marriage was private, deeply committed, and built on respect. He often credited Shirley with keeping him grounded, his anchor amid the chaos of touring, recording, and fame.
The couple had 1 daughter, Serafina, born in March 1968, who later gave birth to Charlie's only grandchild, Charlotte. Watts cherished his family above all else, While the world obsessed over the wild excesses of Jagger or Richards, Charlie kept his personal life far from the spotlight. His image remained that of a reserved, introspective man who valued the quiet pleasures of home over the glare of celebrity attention. Their marriage endured 57 years, a remarkable feat in the world of rock stardom.
Their home, Hollidan House in North Devon, was more than just a residence. It was a sanctuary. Here, Watts ran an Arabian horse stud farm, a passion that brought him peace and creative joy. Caring for and breeding horses revealed another side of Charlie, meticulous, patient, quietly joyful. Friends often remarked that this was the man behind the drums, a man of discipline, detail, and tenderness.
Away from the spotlight, Watts lived with rare simplicity. Though the Stones adored luxury automobiles, Charlie never even obtained a driving license. To him, cars were not for transport, but objects of beauty, works of art to be admired. He also nurtured a lifelong love for cricket, collecting signed bats, vintage photographs, and rare memorabilia with the same precision he gave to his drumming. Cricket connected him to tradition, to history, to something timeless.
Through family, through horses, through cricket and art, Charlie Watts built a life of balance. On stage, he was the heartbeat of the Rolling Stones, driving music that shook stadiums of tens of thousands. But at home, he was simply a husband, a father, a man of quiet pleasures. This duality, the public legend and the private gentleman, defined him completely. So, according to you, Charlie Watts was just the legendary drummer for the Rolling Stones, or was he a man with an ordinary but extraordinary life? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touches you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can discover more secrets behind legends together. Thanks for joining us. See you in the next video.